Hello everyone! Welcome back to this game. My name is Draygone the Willem Fuzzbottom Jr. and these are some of my patrons. Snow Kieran, Hideru, Theo Vellum, and a special thanks to my special sponsor, Draygone. When we last left off, I said that in today's episode, we would be going to the second dungeon of the Dark World, which is to the south over there. And in fact, that's precisely what we're going to be doing today. However, we are not going to be finishing the second dungeon of the Dark World. For you see, guess what guys? I found one heck of a glitch earlier today. Now, before I tell you about the glitch, I feel like it would be in my best interest to first explain to all y'all why Link here is a pink rabbit. Because the way I figure, there's probably going to be a whole bunch of people who come to this video specifically solely to find out about this glitch that I am about to tell you all about. So then, this is a visual mod of The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. And as you can probably guess, in this mod, Link spends the entire game as a pink rabbit. You know, as opposed to the original game in which Link spends maybe 2 minutes as a rabbit at the most. This is primarily a visual Romhack, although there's also some text changes here and there to reflect his new form. Because, you know, you would totally expect people to be all, "Oh my goodness, a 5-foot tall pink rabbit! What the heck?" But aside from that, that's basically it for this Romhack. There are absolutely no changes to the gameplay. All the dungeons are the same, the overworld is the same. It's primarily and almost certainly and exclusively an aesthetic change. So with that in mind, it is probably a safe assumption that the glitch that I am going to be showing you here today is very likely also possible on the original game. So with that said, let's get on with the glitch. Actually, first, let's leave this dungeon. This is the second dungeon of the Dark World, and it appears we can't do anything. Before we can explore this dungeon, we first need to fill the trench in there with water. So let's go into the light world first. And I'd like to point out how the lake here in the light world is all filled up. I would also like to mention that I'm pretty sure that we already emptied that lake at least once on this playthrough. I think we did it twice. But we have to do it again if we want to get into that dungeon. And the reason I'm showing it off on camera, despite already doing it before, is we have not actually done it to get into the dungeon yet. And so, it must be seen. Alright, the lake out here is drained. So now, if we go into the Dark World, the lake here is drained. More importantly, going inside this dungeon, the trench is filled, just like in the light world. I actually find this kind of interesting. This is the only dungeon in the game, as far as I can remember, where your actions in the light world also affect the Dark World. It's like this dungeon is strongly connected to the light world in some way. Like, I don't know, the energies are connected, something, I don't know. At the very least, it's an interesting gimmick for getting into this dungeon. Alright, so as we get through this room, we'll come across a locked door up here. If we want to get over that door, yeah, that makes sense. If we want into that door, we kill these enemies, and that makes a chest with a key appear. Now we can... darn it. I hate getting damaged, don't you? Anyway, open the door, and we head downstairs. Now, in regards to this glitch, the way I found out about this glitch is, like normal, I decided to do a practice run of this dungeon so that I can hopefully do a good job when I actually record this dungeon. and I wound up making my way all the way to the boss of the dungeon, and I decided to try out all of my stuff to see if the boss here had any special weakness. As it turns out though, the items that I have now, none of them really do very much. In fact, most of them don't even do anything at all. However, the boss appears to be something that, under normal circumstances, instead of outright fighting, I would prefer to cook it for supper. And I remembered that in this game, along with the ice rod, there is also a fire rod, a magic rod that shoots fire. And it makes me wonder, can I actually cook the boss here? And so I decided to go looking for the fire rod. I did that by using the magic mirror to teleport out of the boss fight, and I proceeded to leave the dungeon. Now, before I move on, I want to point out that under normal circumstances, when you leave the dungeon like that, all the enemies in the dungeon respawn, but all the puzzles in the dungeon remain solved. Okay, you know what? Screw this thing. I'm freezing it. And killing you, and killing you. Everybody dies. So yeah. Basically this means that even though I left the dungeon, I can just come back later on and just go straight to the boss, because all the puzzles are solved. Cool. And I am going to demonstrate that exact process. So let's see here. Left the dungeon, made my way towards the dungeon that contains the fire rod, and eventually I got the fire rod. And then I made my way back, only to discover that once again the lake was refilled. Apparently, the game does not remember that you empty the lake. In fact, the lake resets anytime you leave the screen to go somewhere else. So, unfortunately, this means that if I want to make my way back in here, I need to do that entire sequence that I did earlier in this episode, where I go to the light world, pull the plunger, fill the trench, drain the lake, and then teleport back to the dark world, and then go into the dungeon. And the reason I'm showing it on camera, despite already doing it earlier in this episode, is because this glitch is such a big deal that I want to show the entire sequence to trigger it. I don't want to cut anything out because I might cut out something important or something like that. And by the way, yeah, I know I'm taking a lot of damage in this episode. I don't really care. This is a demonstration episode. Also, I am not a pro. Anyway, now we can go ahead and back in here. And as I said before, assuming this was my practice run, I had already finished this dungeon. Well, I've made it to the end. All the puzzles are solved, so all I have to do is make my way to the boss. Unfortunately, it does not actually work that way in this particular situation because the door is locked again. Well, that ain't right. Well, here's the chest that the key was in, but it's empty. Will it fill itself if I kill this guy? Nope. It is still empty. What this basically means is this dungeon is now 100% impossible to finish. And the only thing that I can do to finish it is to reset the game. And unfortunately, it also means that I'm gonna have to redo the entire dungeon. Especially for the practice recording, because I still need to get that fire rod. Even worse, what if I save and quit the game? Well, that would mean that I save the fact that I have this locked door and cannot find a key to get through that door. It'd basically kill my save file. It'd make it so that it is completely impossible to finish the game. And that would be unfortunate, to say the least. So, yeah. In regards to this glitch and how it's triggered, I did a little testing and it seems like this is the only dungeon that this occurs. In fact, it also occurs if I were to get halfway into the dungeon or anywhere in the dungeon and save and quit the game. I'd start at the beginning of the dungeon, come up here, and discover that the door is locked again. I'm not sure what's going on. I mean, I have a theory. I think it might have something to do with the fact that, you know, the game doesn't save the fact that you drained the lake. So anytime you leave this map or quit the game, the lake is refilled. And if the lake is refilled, that means the water is not in here. This room gets reset when you quit the game or leave the area. And because it gets reset, that unfortunately means that the door is reset as well. And unfortunately, this chest is not reset. This is quite a big glitch, and surprisingly, I have never seen any mentioning of it. Like, before recording this episode, I looked on YouTube, I did some Googling. Nobody's mentioned this glitch. Am I really the first person to find this? Or am I just the first person to document this? I mean, it's entirely possible that something about this Romhack has caused this glitch, but considering it's only this dungeon and it's tied with the lake resetting, I feel like this almost certainly is a glitch that can be caused in the original game. Mind you, I'm not going to be finding out. If you all want to find out yourselves, well, you can find out yourself, because I am not playing through this whole game again. It's not happening. It's a good thing that I have not saved and quit the game at any point. I don't do that when I'm doing a test recording, or a test run, practice run. Yeah, not gonna do that. So, yep, that is the situation with this glitch. It's quite a biggie. Come to think of it, I suppose it does make sense that a lot of people haven't found this glitch, because I imagine most people would not quit in the middle of a dungeon, especially this point in the game, where by now anybody playing this game would realize that if you quit in the middle of the dungeon, you get sent back to the spawn point, wherever that might be. You don't even get sent to the start of the dungeon. You have to make your way back to the dungeon. So by this point in the game, I imagine anybody who comes to this dungeon would try to play through the entire thing in one sitting. So that is my theory on why this glitch is not well documented. I think that's about it in regards to this glitch. So, down at the bottom of the screen is all of my patrons. Is a list of all of my patrons. Yeah, that's all I'm going to be talking about in this episode. Just this glitch. I know we're not making any progress, and this episode's a little on the short side, but you know, this glitch is such a big deal, I think it deserves its own dedicated episode. With that in mind, I might make up for it by recording another episode tomorrow. Maybe not. Like I said, I did a practice run already of this dungeon, and then I discover I have to do a practice run of this dungeon again, after I get that fire rod again. Oi. So I'm not exactly in a hurry to prepare for the next episode. Maybe I'll record another one sometime this week, though. Probably. Well, whenever the next episode happens, well, I'm not sure what I'll be doing exactly. It all depends on whether the boss here is weak to the fire rod. Either we'll be having seafood, or we won't. Whatever the case may be, I will see you in the next one.